You didn't lose energy, you learned to hide it. He gets up, goes to work, answers messages, comes home. The body keeps moving. The face keeps functioning. But somewhere along the line his inner dial dimmed. What begins as a string of explanations, it's just a phase, everyone lives like this, I'm fine, becomes a quiet method of survival. The mind, tired for years, learns to spend as little as possible. Goals shrink. Curiosity grows faint. Desire becomes a background hum. Even the things that once felt important are edited down to the bare minimum needed to keep going. From the outside, it looks normal. From the inside, there is a slow trimming. Less planning, less pushing, less asking for more. Small choices compound. Missed bedtimes, skipped workouts, sugar for convenience, numbing screens, each one a tiny compromise. Over time, those compromises alter mood, drive, and the hormonal signals that feed male vitality. It is not dramatic, it is cumulative. It is not failure, it is adaptation. This is not a lecture. It is a calm observation. The first brave step is simply to notice. To stop blaming yourself for being exhausted and start watching how you live. Watch the rhythms of your day. Watch the little shortcuts that save energy now but cost it later. Observe without shame. Once observation is in place, small changes can add up. Rebuilding momentum rarely means a sudden overhaul. It begins with one adjusted habit, one reclaimed hour of sleep, one brief move that becomes movement again. Over weeks, these shifts reset feeling and attention. They help the body remember what it can do, and they invite the hormones that support male energy to find steadier ground. If this feels familiar, ask yourself, what tiny compromise do you make most days? Leave a short comment, one honest line. Your observation matters more than a plan right now. Curious what the first practical step looks like? In the next video, we'll name a single, simple habit you can try tomorrow. You didn't fall asleep all at once. The tiredness arrived like water in a slow leak. A missed dawn run here, one less meal with real protein there, a night flipped through a phone instead of sleep. At first, each choice felt reasonable. I'll rest tomorrow. Everyone's busy. I'm fine. An omniscient voice watches and knows these are not single failures, but a pattern. A man learning to spend as little energy as possible so he can keep going. This economy of effort does something quiet and steady. It trims desire at the roots. You stop raising your hand for projects at work. You stop planning trips that require effort. You answer texts later, cancel plans more easily, and explain it away. The body keeps moving, jobs done, bills paid, kids taken to soccer, while the interior life narrows. Day by day, the mind adapts to less input, to fewer small victories. Motivation becomes a scarce resource parceled out like a luxury. There are physical echoes to that change. Sleep cycles fray, appetite becomes inconsistent, and movement becomes extra instead of essential. Over time, those things nudge the biology that supports male energy, including natural testosterone, in softer, cumulative ways. Not catastrophe, just attrition. Not drama, just habit. It's important to hear this without shame. The mind is trying to survive with what it has left. The turning point isn't a heroic overhaul. It's observation. To notice the pattern without judgment is the first brave act. When you stop rehearsing excuses and start watching how you actually spend energy, small openings appear. A consistent bedtime, a short walk after lunch, a simple protein at breakfast. Each one asks only a little and gives back a little. Momentum begins not from willpower, but from tiny, reliable changes. Pause for a moment. What small concession have you slowly allowed to become permanent? Write it down or leave a short comment. Name it, no defense. In the next video, we'll quietly map the daily choices that most reliably lift natural testosterone. Sleep, movement, and what you eat. No extremes, just steps you can try tomorrow. He moves through his day with practiced economy. The kettle boils, the commute happens, the emails get answered, all performed with the same quiet, measured effort that used to be reserved for urgent things. From the outside, it looks fine. Inside, a different currency is being spent. Minutes of attention, sparks of desire, the small risks once taken without thought. Each concession is tiny. Each one alone is reasonable. I'll skip the gym tonight. I'm tired. I don't need to speak up about that at work. I'll have one more drink to relax. Over years, these sensible choices pile into routines that protect energy in the short term but drain it in the long term. The mind adapts. It learns to prefer the path of least resistance, trimming goals that require extra effort. Ambition is quietly scaled back. Initiatives are postponed until they seem less important than they used to. This isn't weakness, it's survival. When a system is low on fuel, it conserves. What's important to notice is that conservation changes the system itself. Mood dulls, drive softens. Hormones that support male vitality, including natural testosterone, respond to signals from sleep, stress, movement, and intention. When those signals say same, the body settles into a lower baseline. Recognition is the hinge, not a verdict, but a fact. Patterns have formed. The brave thing is not to punish yourself for them. It's to observe them without blame. Watch when you choose ease over presence. Note the small rituals that keep you comfortable but smaller. Each observation is data, clear, usable. From there, small reversals accumulate. An extra 20 minutes of sleep, a walk taken deliberately, a boundary spoken softly. These acts are not dramatic, but they shift the signals your body receives. Curiosity is the first practical tool. If this sounds familiar, ask yourself, what tiny habit have I kept that saves effort now but costs me energy later? Leave a comment with one small thing you notice about your day. In the next video, we'll look at 3 simple, evidence-informed habits that reliably nudge energy and natural testosterone back toward the levels you remember. He learned to ration himself the way a city rations water in drought. Small valves closed first, later nights, skipped workouts, quick meals at the desk. Each choice felt reasonable in the moment. The narrator knows this pattern intimately. Not a sudden collapse, but a patient trimming, a slow redesign of desire so that the day could be survived with the least expenditure of will. At first it appears as excuses. It's just a phase. Work is busy. I'll get to it next week. Those phrases are not lies so much as coping mechanisms. They preserve the minimum: a job performed, children cared for, bills paid. What disappears are the margins: time for strength, for sleep that actually restores, for meals that fuel rather than merely fill. Over months and years, that economy of effort changes more than routine. It shifts mood, narrows curiosity, blunts motivation. The body follows the mind's new script. Fewer challenges, lower intensity, reduced signals that once told the endocrine system to stay robust. This is not a moral failing. It is adaptation. The mind learns to protect itself by lowering its own demands. The narrator watches this process without judgment, cataloging how small compromises nudge hormones and habits into quieter states. Low energy is not always an enemy. Sometimes it is a symptom pointing to a life that has been negotiated down. Observation is the first brave act. Start by watching, not fixing. Note where energy leaks out: late screens, meetings that stretch, meals eaten standing up. Keep the notes simple: time of day, mood, what you did or didn't do. The narrator suggests tiny experiments. Add 10 minutes of daylight in the morning, swap one processed snack for a protein-rich option, choose one night to prioritize sleep. Small consistent changes nudge physiology and attention more than heroic overhaul. Curiosity matters here. Ask, where did my energy go? Comment below with one small habit you'll watch this week. In the next video, we turn those notes into the first practical steps: specific, manageable moves to reclaim momentum and rebuild steady vitality. He had learned to economize, not out of cleverness, but out of necessity. When waking felt heavy for years, the mind found ways to spend less: smaller goals, safer choices, fewer invitations. It dressed excuses in routine. I'll do it tomorrow. I'm just tired. And those excuses became the scaffolding of a new life. Little by little, desire and drive were shorn back so the day could continue without collapse. Notice how this looks on a normal morning. The snooze button 3 times, coffee on the go, skipping a real breakfast, sitting for hours, exchanging real conversation for quick texts. Nights are late and shallow. Movement is incidental. Hobbies wait. These are small compromises. Alone, each one feels trivial. Together, they shape mood, appetite, sleep, and even the silent signals your body sends about strength and energy. This isn't a moral failing. It's adaptation. The mind and body learn to preserve the minimum: less effort, less risk, less reward. And when that becomes the default, Parts of you that once powered ambition and libido quiet down. Motivation narrows. Hormones that respond to sleep, stress, nutrition, and movement don't get the signals they need to stay robust. So where does change begin? Not with a grand plan. With watching. Stop blaming, start observing. For 1 week, be a neutral witness. Note 3 things each day. When you felt more alive, when you felt drained, and what you ate before each shift in energy. No judgment, just record. This simple map shows patterns you didn't notice because you were busy explaining them away. Then pick one tiny experiment for the next 7 days. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier, walk for 10 minutes after lunch, or add a protein-rich bite to breakfast. Keep it small, keep it trackable. Observation plus a single, repeatable habit creates feedback. Over time, those micro-corrections add up. Sleep improves, moods lift, movement becomes easier, and the body begins to respond. Curious what a week of quiet observation reveals? Leave one short note below about what a normal day looks like for you. No shame, just description. In the next video, we'll turn your notes into a simple plan that nudges natural hormonal resilience without drama. He stops blaming himself and begins to watch. That watching is not a verdict. It's an act of attention, quiet and steady. From this place of observation, the places where energy leaks become visible, the couch after dinner, the late-night scrolling, the skipped strength session, the days that begin without sunlight. These were not single failures. They were repeated choices small enough to feel harmless, repeated long enough to shape a new baseline for how his body and mind operate. Change does not arrive as a grand overhaul. It slips in through tiny openings. A more regular sleep time nudges deep rest back into the body. 15 minutes of resistance work 3 times a week tells the muscles and the hormones they still matter. A protein-rich breakfast, less booze across the week, a walk in daylight at noon. These are not dramatic gestures. They are signals, steady and honest, that the body learns to read. He measures not by immediate peaks, but by small, reliable returns. Mornings that feel a little clearer, afternoons with a little more focus, a libido that resurfaces quietly instead of shouting. Hormones respond to patterns. If hunger, stress, and inactivity have been the old language, this new grammar, sleep, movement, sunlight, nourishment, social contact, begins to rewrite instructions sent to the body. Start simply. Pick one habit you can keep for 2 weeks. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier, park and walk 3 extra minutes. Add a palm-sized portion of protein to breakfast. Keep it small so you keep it honest. Notice what changes: mood, sleep, appetite, the way tasks feel less heavy. Record one line each evening. What shifted? What stayed the same? That line is proof. The proof is momentum. This is not a sermon. It is testimony to patience. Observation was the first courage. Routine becomes the next. When momentum accumulates, vitality is not theatrical. It is rooted, quieter, and more reliable. Curious what one 2-week habit experiment could look like for you? Comment with the habit you'd try and the hour you're most drained. In the next video, we'll map a simple 2-week plan you can actually keep. He had been moving through days like a man walking a familiar room in the dark, hands out, careful, used to the furniture of compromise. From outside, you could see the routine: wake, work, scroll, sleep. From inside, it felt like conservation, saving what little push remained for the things that absolutely had to be done. The mind narrowed. Desire softened. The body kept moving, but the engine ran on fewer cylinders. Watching him now, with the distance that lets patterns appear, you notice how small changes add up. He let go of "I don't have time" and asked, instead, "What can I do for 5 minutes?" He turned off the phone an hour before bed and found sleep crept back in like an old friend. He walked a little faster, lifted a little more often, ate a plate with more color. None of these were dramatic. None were heroic. They were steady, patient nudges that told his body it could expect more, not immediately, but over time. There is no sudden revival in this story. Vitality in middle age is less about fireworks and more about clearing the dust. Hormones respond to rhythm. Consistent movement, steady sleep, meals that support rather than spike, moments that take the edge off stress. As those rhythms rebuild, so does appetite for bigger things, clearer thinking, a firmer mood, a drive that feels less like pressure and more like intention. The important truth is this: Recovery is an economy of small returns. You don't need to overhaul everything. You need to observe what you've been spending your energy on and decide where to invest a little more. Observation, once again, is not a judgment. It's the map. Notice one thing today. Watch how it makes you feel by the end of the week. Post a line below, one small shift you tried or one small habit you want to test. Curiosity is the doorway. Your comment is the first step out of automatic living. In the next video, we'll translate that curiosity into a simple, repeatable routine you can start tomorrow. 3 practical moves to steady sleep, reduce stress, and gently nudge natural testosterone back toward balance. He learned, slowly, to live on the smallest possible reserve. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in tiny concessions. Fewer early mornings, less planning, postponing hobbies, saying later to conversation and to himself. From the outside, he kept working, loving, showing up. Inside, priorities were trimmed like low branches, quiet, almost invisible. Over years, that economy of effort rewrote what felt possible. Ambition dulled, desire softened, and even the body's signals shifted to match a lower expectation. This is not about blame. An omniscient eye sees how systems adapt, sleep squeezed, stress left unaddressed, movement reduced, calories inconsistent. Hormones respond. Energy levels settle into new normals. Testosterone, one marker among many, moves with habits and context. The point is not to hunt a number, but to notice the map those small choices have drawn. Observation is the first brave act. When he stops insisting, "I'm fine," and begins to watch how he sleeps, what he eats, how he rests, who he spends time with, the outlines of change appear. Simple, repeatable moves send messages back to the body. Regular sleep gives recovery. Strength work tells muscles to stay responsive. Sunlight and steady meals support rhythm. Meaningful connection eases stress. Over weeks, these signals rebuild permission for higher energy. You don't need a dramatic overhaul. Pick one manageable habit and practice it until it becomes ordinary. A 20-minute walk after dinner, a consistent wake time, 3 short resistance sessions in a week, clearing alcohol on some nights. These are small deposits into a system that was spending on survival. Over months, deposits accumulate, mood steadies, focus returns, and curiosity about life grows again. Curiosity, which small habit, if you actually committed to it for 4 weeks, might shift how you feel each day? Leave a reflective comment naming one habit you'll try and what you expect to notice. When you're ready, watch the next video, where we lay out a simple, realistic 4-week plan to rebuild routine and support natural vitality, step by step.
The shadows of exhaustion gave way to newfound clarity, not by fighting the current but by learning to flow with it. The path forward felt not like conquest but communion, a dance of patience, respect, and intentional living. This story isn't hypothetical. It's alive in the practices and struggles of men like James and myself navigating a world that often pulls us away from natural strength. It invites you to examine your own relationship with your body's rhythms and ask, how might tuning in differently change the energy you bring to every part of your life? I woke one morning with a sensation that was unmistakably different. Not just the familiar dullness of fatigue, but a deeper emptiness, as though my internal reservoir was running dangerously low. Instead of the usual routine of pushing through, I paused and felt a strange restlessness stirring beneath the surface. I had just spent the previous evening immersed in meetings and screen time, yet my body seemed to rebel against another day of mindless consumption. It was in this moment that I began to notice the subtle disconnect between external activity and inner vitality, a gap I hadn't fully acknowledged before. Later that day, my brother remarked on how detached I seemed during our conversation. I realized that my thoughts were fragmented, orbiting uncertainties I couldn't quite articulate. I hesitated, then confessed, I'm battling this invisible opponent, a drain not just on my energy but on my sense of purpose. His response surprised me. Maybe your fight isn't with your body alone, but with the invisible environments we've created that dull us. That comment lingered, forcing me to reevaluate the invisible forces shaping men's health beyond what shows up on lab tests or physical checkups. I began exploring the idea that my surroundings act like a slow-acting toxin, infiltrating body and mind without overt warnings. The air we breathe indoors, the processed foods lined up in gleaming supermarket shelves, and the endless barrage of digital noise conspired quietly against inner strength. One evening, as I lit a candle rather than flipping on an overhead light, I realized how artificial brightness had become my default companion, stealing not only my sleep but my sense of calm. This small act of dimming the light became a powerful gesture of reclaiming space for quietude. At the same time, I noticed how prolonged exposure to relentless social expectations created an emotional drag. My interactions felt increasingly performative, as though I was wearing a mask to meet predefined standards of masculinity. That sense of being on all the time imposed a weight that no gym session could lift. I started journaling these realizations, discovering that many of my responses stemmed from unconscious patterns rather than conscious choice. Writing not only illuminated my inner conflicts but also unveiled the ways in which societal pressures had wired me to prioritize endurance over authentic experience. One afternoon, I sat in a sunlit park watching a young father playing with his son. The child's boundless energy and uninhibited joy contrasted sharply with my own simmering lethargy. Suddenly, it hit me how childhood movement and spontaneous play nourish a vitality adults often lose. The structured exercises and regimented routines I'd been following felt mechanical, disconnected from that primal wellspring of life. Encouraged by this insight, I decided to reintroduce unstructured movement into my days. Not with the aim of burning calories or building muscle alone, but to evoke laughter, curiosity, and freedom again. I began taking solitary walks through the woods near my home, shifting focus from performance metrics to sensory awareness. The snap of twigs beneath my boots, the rough bark etched in my palm, the crisp fragrance of pine needles. All these small experiences gently revived my body's aliveness. It felt as though my nervous system was thawing from a prolonged freeze, welcoming invitations to relax and reset. These pauses, away from demands, nurtured a responsible yet relaxed masculinity, one that could stand firm without rigidity. One of the most challenging revelations emerged when I confronted my habitual striving for control. I noticed that much of my depletion came from an unyielding grip on outcomes, a refusal to release tension even in trivial moments. During a stressful work project, I caught myself clenching my jaw and tensing my shoulders, unaware that these physical signs mirrored an internal resistance. That evening, I experimented with consciously surrendering control, breathing deeply as I allowed uncertainty to exist without immediate solutions. This practice didn't diminish my effectiveness. Instead, it restored mental clarity and emotional balance, nurturing a quiet confidence that felt more enduring than forced determination. In conversations with close friends, I discovered a shared frustration. We had all internalized a narrative that equated masculine strength strictly with relentless productivity and emotive suppression. Yet, we collectively yearned for a more expansive definition, one that included deep rest, intentional presence, and vulnerability as pathways to genuine power. These dialogues opened a space where admitting weariness wasn't weakness but a recognized part of the human process adapting to unprecedented cultural pressures. On a particularly cold morning, I committed to embracing cold exposure, dipping into a nearby lake, submerged in freezing water that shocked every fiber of my body awake. The jolt was electric and humbling, a visceral reminder that vitality emerges not from avoidance but engagement with discomfort. Each breath taken in icy stillness became a declaration. I am alive, responsive, and resilient. This ritual ignited a primal urge to defend life's sacred energy rather than merely endure its depletion. Now, when I face moments where my focus wanes or my motivation flutters, I draw upon these new tools. A quiet walk, surrendering control, deliberate exposure to natural elements, and holding space for emotional honesty. These practices have rewoven a tapestry of masculine vitality threaded with nuance and depth, far from simplistic models of strength. Through them, I experience a groundedness that fuels not only my actions but the very essence of who I am becoming. What strikes me most about this process is how it required an invitation to notice the invisible forces operating beneath everyday habits and inner dialogues. By tuning attention toward these subtle currents, I've gradually unearthed reserves of energy and presence previously hidden beneath layers of distraction, obligation, and outdated expectations. The challenge is no longer merely physical endurance but cultivating a life attuned to the rhythms of body and soul together, a balance that feels both dynamic and sustainable. When you encounter your own moments of fatigue or disconnection, consider what unseen factors are at play: environmental, emotional, habitual, and ask what small, unexpected shifts might reclaim a deeper sense of steadiness. The wisdom lies not in overwhelming effort but in gentle realignment with what genuinely nurtures your masculine core. Reflecting on this journey so far, I sense we've wandered through a landscape both familiar and strangely uncharted. A terrain where quiet whispers of change ripple beneath the surface of ordinary days. It's as if we've been tracing the faint outlines of a map, discovering hidden trails concealed by the dense foliage of routine and silent surrender. Each step taken has revealed nuances about ourselves we hadn't dared to face before, stirring an awakening that feels less like a sudden blaze and more like a slow-burning ember catching life beneath ashes long undisturbed. I recall moments when I felt caught between two worlds. The one I'd grown accustomed to, marked by relentless output and muted struggle, and the other, an emerging realm where awareness dawns, inviting me to engage differently. It brought to mind an old proverb about rivers carving canyons through patience, not force. The erosion is imperceptible daily, yet inexorable over time, reshaping what once seemed permanent. Similarly, our inner terrain has been sculpted by countless subtle influences, their cumulative pressure shifting the contours of how we perceive strength, presence, and vitality. During this voyage, I encountered the interplay between tension and release, the dance of resistance that colors our experience. It became clear that movements forward often arrive disguised as surrender, that yielding to something deeper isn't a retreat but a recalibration of power. Like a seasoned sailor navigating turbulent waters, I realized the direction isn't always against the current. Sometimes the course demands flowing with subtle tides, sensing shifts before they manifest. It's an art of attunement and trust, an intimate dialogue between intention and receptive grace. The texture of these insights felt both raw and refined, tinged with the bittersweet recognition that healing seldom aligns with neat milestones. There's a poetic imperfection in how growth winds through spirals rather than straight lines, winding through moments of doubt, clarity, and unexpected stillness. This complexity carries its own beauty, a symphony where dissonance and harmony coexist, inviting us to tune our instruments anew, embracing the fullness of our unfolding composition. I remember sharing a quiet evening with a friend whose own path mirrored mine in surprising ways. Watching him speak of awakening strength in spaces once shadowed by inertia, I sensed an unspoken understanding weaving between us, a quiet solidarity in reclaiming ground long surrendered. The conversation lingered beyond words, hinting at a shared knowing that transformation is less a conquest and more an unveiling, a peeling back of layers to reveal a truer foundation beneath assumptions and societal constructs. This collective rhythm pulses beneath the surface of our individual stories, connecting us in a way that transcends outward distinctions. It's the slow hum of renewal stirring beneath accumulated weariness, a call to heed what's emerging from shadows previously ignored. This resonance urges us to contemplate how we might step into a new cadence, embracing vulnerability as strength and complexity as authentic power. It beckons a reckoning with what it means to reclaim wholeness amid fragmentation. As I navigate these reflections, I find myself drawn to the metaphor of a flame tempered in quiet fires. The glow isn't always fierce or overwhelming. More often, it flickers in steady persistence, resistant to extinguishing winds. It requires fuel, careful tending, and intentional choices to sustain its light. This flame embodies our capacity to reclaim vitality, not through fleeting bursts, but through patience and resilience woven into everyday rhythms. In sharing these thoughts, I invite you to lean into the spaces between exertion and rest, certainty and uncertainty, strength and surrender, to feel the pulse of transformation stirring beneath your own skin and consider what rhythms beckon you forward. Our paths may diverge or converge, yet we share the profound task of rediscovering energies that breathe life into our presence and purpose. The horizon feels near, painted with possibilities that shimmer just beyond reach, fragile yet tantalizing, like dawn's first light caressing a quiet landscape. In this threshold moment, the questions arise not as burdens but as gateways to greater belonging within ourselves. How might we step into this space with courage and openness, knowing that the true journey springs from within? Together, moving through these mysteries, we inch closer to a place where our vitality isn't measured by exhaustion masked as endurance, but by an awakened engagement that honors each facet of our humanity. The path beckons, waiting for the next step, one threaded with intention, trust, and a readiness to meet ourselves anew. There was a long stretch of sleepless nights when I questioned if my strength had simply disappeared, if the fierce energy that once ignited my mornings had quietly slipped away, lost forever. I felt fractured, caught between the weight of exhaustion and a deep longing to reclaim a vital spark that no longer seemed within reach. On one such restless evening, I glanced at the mirror and almost failed to recognize the man staring back. His eyes reflected struggle, his stance betrayed weariness, but somewhere in that reflection, a flicker of defiance lingered. It's in moments like these that I realized the fight isn't about restoring an old version of myself. It isn't about chasing a past ideal or enveloping my life in forceful determination like a shield. Instead, it's about embracing a new kind of awakening, a careful unfolding that honors the complexity of my being. The journey led me to understand that true strength emerges when I allow myself the grace to listen, to heal, and to rebuild not through urgency, but with steady intention. Facing this truth felt like stepping out of a dense fog, where I could finally see not just the challenges, but the potentials waiting patiently to be rediscovered. I learned to embrace vulnerability as part of my power, recognizing that guarding walls of rigidity only amplified isolation and drain. A conversation over coffee with an old friend crystallized this insight. He said, "It's not about fighting fatigue with relentless force. Some of the strongest people I know cultivate stillness and renewal as fiercely as others chase action." Those words reverberated in me, challenging me to rethink what it meant to embody masculinity. Strength, I realized, is deeply tied to rhythm and balance, a harmony between resilience and softness, action and rest, resolve and surrender. There's a poetic justice in allowing myself moments of quiet reflection, unburdened by unrealistic expectations of constant output. I began to notice how freeing it felt to release worn-out narratives that equated worth with nonstop productivity or stoic silence. Instead, I started to nurture a relationship with my own needs and limitations, giving space to discomfort without judgment. This process didn't weaken me. It expanded my capacity for presence, connection, and authentic leadership in every area of my life. I remember walking through a forest trail as twilight approached, feeling the cool air awaken my senses in ways I hadn't anticipated. The fading light reminded me that endings and beginnings coexist, that darkness invites us to rest and gather strength for what lies ahead. Standing there, surrounded by trees that had weathered seasons of change, I felt a quiet kinship, an intimate understanding that transformation is neither swift nor easy, but always worth the effort. Emerging from these reflections, I recognize how essential it is to cultivate awareness not as a means of control, but as a pathway to freedom. When I pay close attention to what my body, mind, and heart truly need, I tune into a wisdom far beyond fleeting motivation or external approval. This wisdom invites me to create space for growth through intentional acts, whether that's waking with purpose, embracing discomfort as teacher, or opening myself to genuine dialogue about the fears and hopes that shape me. The path ahead feels less like a race and more like a pilgrimage, one that requires the courage to walk slowly, to stumble, and to rise continually. Along this way, I'm learning that reclaiming my vitality is an act of reverence for the full spectrum of my humanity. It is a profound commitment to embodying a masculinity that is whole, nuanced, and imbued with life's fullest dimensions. If you find yourself wrestling with a similar erosion of spirit, know that you are not isolated in this struggle. Our stories intersect in shared quests for renewal and authenticity. The invitation is open, to meet this challenge not with denial or despair, but with a brave willingness to awaken to what remains strong within you, waiting patiently beneath layers of fatigue and silence. I encourage you to listen deeply to your own rhythms, to honor the subtle signals that call for rest, repair, or recalibration. Trust in the slow alchemy of transformation, the small, daily choices that weave together a renewed sense of power and peace. This is how we reclaim our essence, how we rise with steadiness and grace, and how we step forward ready to meet the world with clarity of heart and vigor of spirit.